What you're about to notice might feel subtle at first, almost too simple to matter, but it changes how you understand every moment you experience. Your brain is not showing you reality as it is, it's showing you a compressed version of it. Not metaphorically, not loosely, but in a very literal, functional way. Just like a file gets compressed to save space and process faster, your brain reduces the amount of information it has to deal with, stripping away detail, simplifying patterns, and filling in gaps so efficiently that you never realize anything is missing. Right now, as you look around, everything feels complete. The room feels stable, the objects feel solid, the details feel present. But that sense of completeness is constructed. The amount of raw data coming into your eyes alone is far beyond what your brain could ever process in full detail. Light is carrying an overwhelming amount of information. Every reflection, every texture, every microcontrast, every depth cue. If your brain tried to render all of it at full resolution, it wouldn't just slow down, it would collapse under the load. So instead, it does something far smarter. It compresses. It keeps what matters most and removes what it thinks you don't need. Not randomly, not carelessly, but strategically. It identifies patterns, general shapes, familiar structures, and once it recognizes those, it stops processing the fine detail. That detail doesn't get stored somewhere else waiting for you to notice it. It gets discarded. The version of reality you experience is already reduced before it even reaches your awareness. And here's where this becomes immediately relevant to you. If your brain is compressing reality, then your experience is not just simplified, it's incomplete. You are not fully present by default, even when you feel like you are. Entire layers of detail are being filtered out in real time, and you never feel the absence because your brain replaces what's missing with assumptions. So if you've ever felt like time moves too fast, or like moments slip by before you can fully take them in, or like you miss things even when you're paying attention, this is part of the reason. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand how to temporarily reduce that compression, how to become more present when you want to, and how to actually experience more of what's already in front of you. So stay with this, because the most useful part of this isn't just understanding the idea, it's learning how to change how much of reality you actually experience. To understand what your brain is doing, it helps to think about how compression works in a system we already understand. When you compress an image file, you're not just making it smaller, you're removing information. Fine textures disappear, subtle gradients get flattened, small details are blended into broader shapes. But the key is that the image still looks normal at a glance. It still feels complete because your brain fills in what's missing. Your brain uses that same strategy on reality itself. It doesn't process every detail equally. It prioritizes. The center of your attention gets the highest resolution, while everything else is represented in a lower, more approximate form. That's why you can stare directly at something and notice detail. But the moment you look away, that detail fades into a generalized version of itself. Your brain is not maintaining a fully detailed model of everything at all times. It's dynamically adjusting resolution based on where your attention is. You can test this in a simple way. Look at something in front of you. Really focus on it. Notice the edges, the textures, the subtle variations. Now shift your attention slightly to the side and try to hold that same level of detail in your peripheral vision. You can't. Not because your eyes failed, but because your brain chose not to allocate resources there. The rest of your visual field is compressed, and it stays that way until you direct attention toward it. This selective detail is one of the clearest examples of compression in action. Your brain creates the illusion of a fully detailed world, but in reality, only a small portion of what you see is rendered in high resolution at any given moment. Everything else is simplified, approximated, or filled in. And it doesn't stop with vision. The same process happens with sound. In a noisy environment, you don't hear every conversation with equal clarity. Your brain compresses background noise into a general layer and highlights what it considers important. The same happens with touch. You're not constantly aware of every sensation on your skin, only the ones your brain decides to bring into focus. Most sensory information is filtered out before it reaches your awareness. Memory takes this even further. You might feel like your memories are stored experiences, like recordings you can replay, but they aren't. Your brain doesn't store everything. It stores key elements, emotional tones, general outlines. When you remember something, you reconstruct it using those compressed pieces. The details you feel so confident about are often filled in during recall, not preserved from the original moment. This is why memories change over time, not because you're forgetting in a simple way, but because each time you recall something, you're rebuilding it from compressed data. Small details shift, new interpretations are added, and over time, the memory becomes less about what actually happened and more about how your brain has reconstructed it. The same principle applies to how you move through familiar environments. When you walk into a place you've been many times, your brain doesn't process it from scratch. It uses a compressed model, a stored representation of what that environment usually looks like, and overlays your current perception onto that model. That's why you can move through spaces almost automatically, without consciously noticing most of what's there. But this efficiency comes with a trade-off. Because your brain relies on compression and prediction, it can miss things that don't fit its expectations. You can look directly at something and not see it, simply because your brain didn't prioritize it. The information reached your eyes, but it didn't survive the compression process into your conscious experience. And this is where the idea becomes more than just interesting. It becomes actionable. If compression is tied to attention and expectation, then changing how you use your attention can change how much of reality you experience. You can't turn compression off completely. Your brain needs it to function, but you can reduce it in specific moments. One of the simplest ways to do this is to deliberately slow down how you look at things. Instead of scanning quickly, pause and let your attention rest on a single object longer than you normally would. As you do that, you'll start to notice details that weren't there a second ago. Not because they suddenly appeared, but because your brain increased the resolution in that area. Another way is to widen your awareness instead of narrowing it. Normally, your attention locks onto one thing at a time, compressing everything else. But if you consciously try to take in more of your surroundings at once, you can experience a broader, less compressed version of your environment. It won't be as sharp in any one place, but it will be richer overall. There's also a shift you can make in how you listen. Instead of focusing only on what's directly relevant, try to notice the layers of sound around you, the distant noise, the subtle background patterns, the space between sounds. When you do this, the environment becomes more detailed, not because anything changed, but because your brain is allowing more information through. What all of these have in common is that they interrupt the automatic compression process. They signal to your brain that more detail is needed, that this moment is worth allocating more resources to. And when that happens, your experience changes. Time can feel slower, moments can feel fuller, and your sense of presence becomes stronger. Because presence, at its core, is not about being in the moment in some abstract sense. It's about how much of the moment you're actually processing. The more your brain compresses, the less you experience. The less it compresses, the more detail becomes available to you. And this leads to a final shift in how you think about your everyday experience. Most of the time, you are moving through a highly optimized, low-resolution version of reality, one that is efficient, predictable, and just detailed enough to get you where you need to go. But when you choose to slow down, to pay attention differently, to expand your awareness, you can step into a higher resolution version of that same reality. Nothing outside of you changes. The world is just as detailed as it always was. What changes is how much of it your brain allows you to experience. And once you start to notice that, once you realize that the richness of your experience is not fixed, but adjustable, something shifts. You stop assuming that what you see is all there is, and you start recognizing that there is always more detail available just beyond what your brain is currently showing you. I post regularly about the deeper side of the human experience. If you found this video interesting, like and subscribe for more.